This is the Jerusalem Post podcast travel edition. Coming up.
My best airport story is a non-airport story.
If you're ever in Regensburg, you should go to the stone bridge, which is the oldest stone bridge in Europe, and enjoy absolutely amazing sunsets over the Danube.
I was in an airport in northern China, and they open my bag and they see my Tefillin, and they say, "What's this?"
So sit back and enjoy the trip with David Harris and Mark Gordon.
So for those of you who listen to our podcasts in order to, I don't know what, but if you listen to them in numerical order, you'll know that our last podcast was our introduction to Panama and our amazing, amazing time. The last episode was it 108?
No.
106?
Possibly. Are we playing bingo?
Was...
Lotto, sorry, for our American audience.
Mark used to know every episode until we actually got to three figures and then he lost it. The last episode was all about kosher in Panama, and as we said in the last episode, there's much more on Panama to come. On the way back from Panama, something funny happened.
I'm not sure if it was funny. You know when you watch those little maps of where you're flying around the world?
Yes.
And it says you've got 8 hours left and it's nighttime somewhere on the other side of the world and it's raining in Antarctica. Mm-hmm. Ours did a U-turn. We were going in one direction. All of a sudden it started turning the other way. And I thought, crumbs, I forgot to get off the plane in Paris.
I had for about 15 minutes before the end of the flight because I figured I cannot watch any more episodes of Young Sheldon. So I decided to watch the cameras on board. There was one on the tail and there was one at the front. So you got two angles pretty much showing you the same thing. And Paris was looming large.
I was watching my second Beetlejuice film. I didn't even notice what was going on.
We're getting lower and lower. And I think I even said to Mark, across the person who was in between us, we both had aisle seats in the middle bit of the plane. There was a guy fast asleep the whole flight in between us. And I sort of said over him, Mark, we're coming down at a strange angle.
He was at a strange angle as well.
He really was. He slept on you a few times during the flight.
I didn't want to wake him, and he was very friendly, but maybe a bit too friendly.
So we're getting lower and lower. And we're really, I always do this sort of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, trying to guess when the wheels are going to touch down. And we're still going sideways. And we got to about 3 in my countdown.
2, 1. And it kept going. What happens after 0? Did you go to -1?
So there was a great big zipper on the runway and somebody unzipped it and we just went straight through the earth. No, this was incredible praise, and it's the first time that it's happened to both Mark and I. Incredible praise for the captain of the Air France flight on which we were sat.
And also praise for the cabin crew for keeping me plied with alcohol the whole way through the flight, so I missed all that was going on. What
happened was, it was windy. And there was a sudden huge gust that had blown the aircraft off centre as we were heading towards the runway. And so we're getting right down. I mean, it really was that 3, 2, 1 bit of landing. And suddenly you heard the thrusting of all of the engines. And we just shot straight up into the sky again.
When David drew my attention to the fact that the airplane had done a U-turn, it suddenly went from 1 minute to destination to 30 minutes for destination. And me being an over-planner and knowing we had 2 hours between flights, as that number got bigger, I'm starting to claw at David going, what's going on? Are we going to make our flight?
And being who he is, he started getting at his will and making the adjustments, making sure that I wasn't in it. Anyway, the landing the second time was perfect, even though as we came in, everybody was aware of what was going on. All of the screens were suddenly showing, these cameras. And again, we came down at a very jaunty angle, let's call it, but we landed beautifully. So thank you very much indeed, Madam or Mr. Captain from Air France.
And thank you to the lovely Houthi people of Yemen for delaying our second flight, which meant we had plenty of time to sit down and finish writing articles and recording podcasts.
What a journey that was. So let's tell you what's coming up in this episode of the podcast.
With all that flying chat, maybe we should have a few more of our airport stories.
Okay, we'll do that straight after the ad break in a second. And then we are going to head to a city that I didn't know that much about till fairly recently, and I started looking at videos and photographs and listening to stories about Regensburg in Bavaria in Germany, and now I cannot wait to visit. So we're going to be hearing from a Jewish tour guide about general Regensburg, but also the Jewish story of the city.
Is there a Ronald Regensburg?
Time for a quiz question. Georg Ratzinger was a German Catholic priest, soap opera actor, comedian and musician known for his work as the conductor of the Regensburger Domspatzen. His brother, Joseph, was better known by what name later in life?
Ronald Ratzinger.
Oh, shut up. You're meant to say...
Ronald Regensburger Domspatzen.
You're meant to say... The
Answer at the end of the podcast.
Well done, Mark.
Thank you.
To talk the latest news in Israel, the Jewish world, and everything in between.
This is the J-Post Podcast. I'm Tamar Uriel-Beery, Deputy Editor-in-Chief of the Jerusalem Post.
And I'm Tzvika Klein, Editor-in-Chief of the Jerusalem Post.
And I'm Sarah Ben-Nun, Night Editor at the Jerusalem Post. Join us as we bring some of the most impactful voices to bring you into what it means to be Jewish, to be Israeli today.
Every week, we bring you with us into the newsroom in every sense.
Stop being so dramatic. This is just our coffee break.
You can find us every Thursday on jpost.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
We'll see you there.
Yalla, bye.
This is Mark Gordon from the Jerusalem Post Podcast Travel Edition. Find us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter at MarkDavidPod, or mail us at markdavidpod@gmail.com.
So it's time for an apology. You might remember a couple of episodes ago, we invited listeners and a couple of podcasters to tell us their stories of their travels through airports and on planes. And we even introduced and thanked a couple of our guests. And they never actually got to tell their story because somebody who shall remain nameless, but might be the one speaking to you right now, had deleted those files from the final version of the podcast that went to air. So I'm going to take you back a couple of weeks, and this is what should have actually made it to the podcast. Take it away, Mark.
Let's get on with some of our special guests. We'll start with stories from airports. My favourite place, or certainly the bar in the airport is my favourite place. And one of the ways I've worked on my anger management is having 2 or 3 wines before we fly.
So here's something interesting, Mark. You know, when we're in Tel Aviv and occasionally we deign to go into the James Richardson duty, as the Israelis say, the duty-free store, which is where all the perfumes and cigarettes and booze are stored. As you know, in many, many stores these days around the world, when you're lining up, when you're in the queue, there are these baskets of discounted goods. And in James Richardson, they're predominantly Bamba, Halva, and the other thing that they have are those miniature bottles of booze.
I would argue with you on the word discount.
But the big question is, if you know that you're on a plane where there's no drinks service, should you or can you smuggle in a bit of vodka, a bit of Baileys, a bit of whiskey?
Smuggling is not a good idea, David.
Yes, we do not condone the bringing on board of alcohol on planes where it is specifically banned. But it does taste good and give you a bit of a thrill when you're up in the sky.
It kind of reminds me of when you were having your bags checked because you were potentially smuggling something. We were in Beijing and then Shenzhen.
Suddenly, there's a Mr. Harris, could you follow me? We're with a group of about 8-9 people. We had one Chinese person with us who was looking after us, the wonderful Mr. May from the Chinese embassy here in Tel Aviv. And they called me out. I remember, I think it was Leora, who was one of the people traveling with us, pointing and panicking when she saw me being taken away by personnel at Beijing airport. Anyway, I got to a counter and a very formal lady, didn't smile, said, "Can I see your charging device?" So I bought this great big charging device, 30 mega hooties or whatever it's.
Are they hooties?
No, 30 mega hooties. Basically, too much to bring onto the plane because there's a risk of explosions, etc., etc. Anyway, they allowed me through. Then I got to Shenzhen, and the same thing happened again. And there, poor Mr. May had to accompany me all the way, pretty much from the gate, all the way back through all of the security procedures, all the way to the check-in counter, where the airline had to fill in a form to say that they would allow me to bring this darn thing on board. Long story.
Talking of stories, shall we hear from a couple of our guests?
In a minute, we'll hear from Stanley from Kibbutz Alumim, which is on the Gaza border, about his travels in China. But first, you may well recognize this well-known voice.
My best airport story is a non-airport story. So I was on a flight from San Francisco to Taipei where I had a 7-hour and 55-minute layover, and then on a flight to Bangkok. And on my flight to Bangkok, I was sitting next to a young gal with purple hair who I recognized from the first flight from San Francisco to Taipei. So I asked her what she had done during the layover, and she had just hung out in the airport. Well, I had taken an airport layover tour. So while she was just hanging out in the airport, I had gone into Taipei, been to a UNESCO World Heritage Site, a temple there, gone to a street market, gone to the Grand Hotel built by Chiang Kai-shek, driven by the National Palace Museum, which wasn't open just yet because it was an early morning arrival, gone to the Chiang Kai-shek Memorial Hall, got my picture taken in front of the presidential office building, gone up in Taipei 101, and had soup dumplings at Din Tai Fung in the base of Taipei 101. So sometimes the best airport stories are escaping from the airport. This is Chris Christensen from Amateur Traveler.
I was in an airport in northern China. I can't remember the exact one. A small airport. And I went to security and they opened my bag and they see my Tefillin. And they say, "What's this?" They didn't have any English. I didn't have any Chinese. They sort of look at it puzzled. So they sit me down and they pull out this enormous book. It was probably 3 feet tall, 3 inches wide. Enormous book, like, I don't know, one of these books you saw in the old libraries many years ago. And they start, 2 or 3 of them, looking through the book. They looked and looked and looked, and then suddenly after about 5 minutes, felt like maybe it was 2, they found it. And then they're all very happy, nodding. So this book must be a list of all strange things connected to cultures or religions that people can carry around the world. They nodded, and they put it back in my bag and shook my hand, and off I went.
Outside of Buenos Aires, where would you recommend visiting?
Tell us why you've got a passion for Jewish history as an author.
Is there something unique here that you won't see anywhere else in Georgia or even the world?
Why on earth would you take this incredible boat and launch it in Israel, of all places?
Has David Hasselhoff been to the David Hasselhoff Museum?
You're listening to the Jerusalem Post podcast travel edition with Mark Gordon and David Harris.
I like lists, David. It's my accountancy background.
The Titanic listed.
They listed it for sale after they paid for the expedition.
Yes, what do you mean by you like lists?
I like making lists of where I've been. I've got one of those apps where you can mark how many countries you've been to.
Yes, you're just trying to rub it in that at the moment you've been to 2 more than me, and it's soon to go up to several more than me.
Possibly, although we've got a change of plan on that one.
Ooh, you'll tell me that after we finish recording.
But my other list, which is almost growing as long as the list of countries I've been to...
I don't know if I want to know what this list is going to be.
It's not whiskies, and it's not wines. It's places where I plan to go, but world events stop me going.
God, I think that's almost as long as the list that we've got of places that we actually have been.
So, as we sit here, we're supposed to be in Germany at the moment.
Yep.
But we're not. We're here in Israel, which of course we love.
Yes, sorry, I was just,
Thinking of Germany and bratwurst.
vegetarian bratwurst.
And I think this started at the beginning of COVID when we were going to Odessa.
Yeah, we had a guy, was he called Peter?
He was in Lviv.
Yeah, lovely, lovely guy. He told us all about Lviv, he told us about Odessa, and we actually had a trip booked to go from Krakow in Poland to Lviv, and then on to Odessa in Ukraine, and then to go to, are we going to call it Kishinev, Chisinau?
In our previous podcast, I think we found out it was pronounced Chisinau.
Chisinau in Moldova.
I've been there. It's just on my list of places I've been.
You did that with your real wife, not with your podcast wife.
My favourite wife.
These were amongst the things that we wanted to do.
If only there was a way of combining Odessa with Krakow, which was going to be the start of our journey, and then finishing off in Germany, perhaps.
Enter our next guest. We would like to welcome Olga Bokhonovskaya to the podcast. She is the brains behind Your Jewish Heritage Guide. We'll give you the URL at the end of the interview, but look them up. They're a great company. Olga, as Mark perhaps intimated there, is originally from Odessa, but then, of course, unfortunately, her world and that of so many others was turned upside down with the start of the war and the invasion of Russia into Ukraine.
So Olga packed her bags and went off to Krakow. But we're not going to talk about Krakow because we've been there so many times we probably count as citizens now of Krakow. And we love Krakow. But we want to cover for the fact that we can't be in Germany at the moment. So we're going to talk about Olga's favourite German city,
which is Regensburg in Bavaria. It's got an amazing general story and a fascinating Jewish story. First, we asked Olga why she chose Regensburg for this conversation.
I knew Regensburg before I moved here because Regensburg is Odessa's sister city. They have a lot in common. Regensburg, for centuries, was a very open-minded and a very big merchant city, the way Odessa was, and still is. So Regensburg was quite familiar. I fell in love with Regensburg immediately when I first traveled there, and that was already in 2022. Amazing Jewish history and general history, which is very much interconnected, so that's why Regensburg. Another interesting thing, I love Italy. And Regensburg is called the most Italian city north of the Alps. And indeed, it doesn't look much like your typical old German city with those half-timber houses. It's very different. And it has a very special vibe.
Regensburg is famous initially for having a medieval city centre. Can you tell us something about that city centre and the city's history in general?
Regensburg's Old Town is known to be the largest medieval old town north of the Alps, which means outside Italy. In 2006, it was included in UNESCO World Heritage. But the city's history goes all the way back, actually, to the prehistoric times. The first known people who settled there were the Celts in the 3rd century BC, but then a big part of the city's history is the time of the Romans settling there. And for the Romans, it was a big fort and then legionnaires' camp, which they founded in the 1st century of our time, which became real big with about 6,000 Roman legionnaires in the 2nd century when the Roman Empire was at its peak. And there are quite a lot of artifacts still preserved in the old town, which take us back to the Roman time. When the Roman Empire fell apart, on the ruins, basically, of the Roman Empire, the Bavarian Kingdom was created, and Regensburg became the first capital of the Bavarian Kingdom, a very important bishopric center, and from there Christianity spread to many parts of Central and Eastern Europe, and that's an amazing connection with Krakow, and one of the many connections the city has with Krakow. Already in the 1000s, Regensburg was located on the most important trading routes, which crossed Europe west-east, north-south, and that when the golden age of the city started. And it went on until the late 1300s. And that's basically when was the time when the Jewish community was flourishing there.
So let's get on to the Jewish community. It makes sense that as trade developed, as it became this crossroads in Europe, that would be the point that Jewish traders came in. So run us through a little bit of that Jewish history and what we can see of that today.
The first written record of the Jews living in Regensburg, and that's just the first written mention of the Jews in Regensburg, dates back to the year 981. Basically, that's when real growth of Regensburg as a merchant city started, which means that Regensburg had one of the oldest Jewish communities in Central Europe. And just a few fascinating facts about the Jewish heritage. The Jews had been living there for about 600 consecutive years. So Regensburg Jews were not expelled from the city during the pogroms of the Black Death in 1349, 1350. They were not massacred during the Rindfleisch pogroms, which were all over Bavaria in the 1290s. They were protected by the residents of Regensburg. And another fascinating fact, the Jews had been living all those 600 years in one quarter. So Regensburg kept growing, but the Jewish quarter was not moved to any other part of the city and ended up being right in the heart of Regensburg. So still today, we cannot find, unfortunately, there are no traces of the medieval Jewish community. The Jews were expelled from Regensburg in 1519, and the medieval Jewish quarter was erased. The synagogue and the yeshiva was quite known in Central Europe. Everything was destroyed. The Jewish houses were destroyed, but during the excavation works in 1990s, they found the basements of that medieval synagogue and the houses, and these days there's an underground museum of Regensburg, and you can go there and see quite a lot of artifacts which belong to the Roman period, to the medieval history of the city, and to the medieval Jewish community, including the remains of the basements, including some artifacts like the old Jewish seals. And actually, one of them belongs to a woman. And it proves the fact that in a lot of those medieval communities, Jewish women were very active, both in business and in the daily life of the community. So you can see a seal which belonged to a Jewish woman. The community, of course, was reestablished quite quickly because Regensburg remained being a very important political center in Europe at that time. There was some Jewish presence already in the 1600s, about 100 years after the Jews had been expelled. And in the 1700s, a private residence house was turned into a prayer house, and that residence building is still there with a sign dedicated to the fact that the synagogue was reopened there, and the Rebbe was there, and it was known to be the first Rebbe who spoke German. We know where in the 1800s the synagogue was, and there was the sign. These days, Regensburg has the new synagogue, which was built in 2009 on the place of the synagogue which was destroyed during the Kristallnacht pogrom. It was a very interesting project funded by the city council, by the federal government, by the government of Bavaria, and supported by the German Jewish community. The building is there, but it has also the sign dedicated, the memorial plaque, which is dedicated to that synagogue which was destroyed. There are a few villas, which once belonged to the Regensburg Jews in the early modern period and in the early 1900s. There are, of course, a lot of stumbling stones. There are about 240 stumbling stones, and they are very visible in Regensburg.
You mentioned the stumbling stones. David and I have seen them in Berlin. Is it a German government scheme to put stones outside the houses of where...
It's a private project which was initiated by an architect from a German town of Cologne. And a stumbling stone, it's a commemorative sign. It's a plaque, which is about 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters, is square, and every sign is handmade by a German artisan who is not Jewish. He insists on them being handmade because he said that the Nazis automated the process of mass murders of the Jews. So that's why, in order to commemorate their memories, the process needs to be manual. That stumbling stone is put in front of the house or a place, which was the final address of a Jew who either perished during the war or had to flee or committed suicide, for example. In this case, the stumbling stone said fled to Todd. And you need to have a permission of people who live in this block. But otherwise, even those individuals who live in this apartment block, if they researched the history and they found out that there was some Jewish residents in the apartment block prior to the war, and they want to put that stone, they can submit a form, an application with the research details, with the names. They may need to pay for that stumbling stone, and I think the cost is about €150, €120. And eventually it will be placed on the sidewalk.
There seems to be a lot to do in Regensburg. If you've had a hard day's sightseeing, what's the nightlife like in Regensburg and what's the cuisine like?
We can say that it's a provincial city in Bavaria because it's the fourth largest city in Bavaria. It's not Munich, it's not even like Nuremberg, but about 30% of the population are young people who study in Regensburg University and in a tech school. There are quite a lot of bars and restaurants in the old town, which feature Bavarian cuisine, Regensburg cuisine, Regensburg sausages, which are different from Munich sausages and Nuremberg sausages. So they have their own, which are served in Regensburg buns, which are also special. You can have a meal in very interesting restaurants or beer gardens located in historic mansions. And while actually eating that Regensburg sausage or having local beer or wine, you can learn the history of that mansion. You will be eating in a 16th century mansion which once belonged to a wealthy patrician. To just give you one example. So they have their food specialties. For example, Bavarian bruschettas, which are with beef. And I know that that's something we need to keep in mind while traveling in Germany because the number one meat served in most of the German places is pork, but you can find quite a lot of dishes with beef there. Wine and beer. So it's not the place where you should drink only beer. No, they have wine. They serve wine there, and that's part of the local heritage. There are not that many nightclubs. I mean, it's not Berlin in terms of the nightlife. No, it's a bit more on the quieter side, but I can tell you that if you're ever in Regensburg, you should go to the Stone Bridge, which is the oldest stone bridge in Europe, and enjoy absolutely amazing sunsets over the Danube. That's what makes this city special. And by the end of the day, having done all the sightseeing and touring, that's where you need to go. You need to sit at some place like a pub or even on the small eatery along the Danube and enjoy a beautiful sunset.
How do people find out more about you and your guided tours?
We have the website. It's very simple, yourjewishheritageguide.com. And the contacts are there. And we have a Facebook page and an Instagram account, Your Jewish Heritage Guide or Dessa Walks. You can find a lot of stuff there, or just go to yourjewishheritageguide.com and contact us. If you need any tips on traveling to Regensburg, if you'd like to know more about our tours there, please feel free to contact us.
I hope I get this right. Olga Bokhonovskaya.
You got it right.
From Your Jewish Heritage Guide. Thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you for inviting me. It was my pleasure.
Regensburg Fact File. The nearest large airports to Regensburg are Munich and Nuremberg. Nuremberg Airport is mostly for domestic flights and a few European destinations. But Munich is a major international hub with flights arriving from some 70 countries. You can fly into Munich from New York, Boston, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Toronto, Vancouver, Tel Aviv, Dubai, and many other major cities. From Munich Airport, there's a direct hourly regional train to Regensburg. The journey takes around 80 minutes. From Nuremberg Airport, you'll have to take an U-Bahn to Nuremberg Central Station, then pick up a train to Regensburg with a 90-minute journey time. There are direct trains to Regensburg from Vienna, Prague, Frankfurt and Hamburg, to name just a few. The historic centre of Regensburg is a pedestrian zone, so take local buses or maybe rent a bicycle to see the sights. Recommended hotels include the Bohemian, the Orpheus, Das Regensburg and the Hotel am See. The currency is the euro. 100 US dollars will buy you some 89 euros at the end of May 2025. Regensburg summers are comfortable and partly cloudy, and the winters are very cold, snowy and mostly cloudy. Over the course of the year, the temperature typically varies from -4 degrees Celsius to 25 degrees Celsius, or 25 to 77 degrees Fahrenheit. The best time of the year to visit Regensburg for warm weather activities is from late June to early September. The city has a superb variety of places to eat, from snacks to traditional brewery fare via international cuisine to high-class restaurants. The Wirtsküchel at the Stone Bridge, founded over 900 years ago, is said to be the oldest fast food restaurant in the world. There is a small beer garden right at the riverbank where you can enjoy the sausage specialities served by waiters in medieval dress. For vegetarians, try Dada and the Katzen Temple, which is also a cafe for cats.
Discover the future with Inside Israeli Innovation. I'm Eve Young from the Jerusalem Post, bringing you exclusive insights from Israel's top innovators. Each week, we dive into the latest trends in tech, business, and beyond with interviews from the brightest minds in the industry. Whether it's cutting-edge startups or revolutionary tech breakthroughs, Inside Israeli Innovation is your front row seat to the startup nation. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast platform and stay ahead of the curve. Inside Israeli Innovation, where innovation meets inspiration.
Oh, wow. Regensburg and sausages sounds absolutely fantastic.
But served by sausage specialities, if you heard that at the end of the fact file, that took quite a few goes to say.
Right, so let's do our thank yous at the end of the podcast to Olga, to Chris, and to Stanley. We hope you enjoyed everything. And if you would like to submit a story, it doesn't have to be about an airline or an airport. You can do so by emailing us, markdavidpod@gmail.com, or you can find us across social media at markdavidpod.
And listeners out there in Listenerland, I implore you, we want to go on bigger and better trips to bring... No, it's only for the listener, David. It's not for us. We want to go on bigger and better trips. Not that we're going to go on a much bigger and much better trip than our recent trips.
I actually sat with a couple of groupies the other day. I was shocked. It doesn't matter where I was, but I was sitting there and we got talking and they said, "Who are you?" And I obviously want to show off that I work with Mark. So I said, we host the podcast together, and they are real groupies. And what they said, which was fabulous, is that before they go away, they listen to our advice and they do the opposite.
I bet you never mentioned me.
I did. In fact, I got out my phone and I said to the guy, it was a husband and wife team, I said...
You try sharing a room with him.
No, I said, I'm going to call him and you can say hello, because he doesn't often get to hear from fans. And this guy balked. He headed as far away from the phone as possible. So you never found out about the call?
No, but I did find out about the fans because you were so excited. You WhatsApped me from the wedding.
We've got fans. We've got real live fans. It doesn't happen every day.
Even I don't listen to all our episodes.
They've listened to every episode, but what was beautiful about them is not just that they listen to us. This is actually a serious comment. They listen to us, but they listen to several other podcasts as well, and they listen to the advice from the different ones. They put it all together, and they make amazing trips out of it.
Did we ever mention that the London Jewish News put us down as one of their favourite podcasts?
There you go.
There you go. Somebody else that listened to us. Anyway, listeners in Listenerland, having done our little ego trip, I implore you, give us a... Stop snorting.
Implore is your big word of the week.
It's your word. I just stole it. Don't you implore?
No,
you beg. You go on bended knee.
I beg. I bended knees.
I implore you out there for the last time.
I genuflect in your general direction.
Please, if you're still listening and you're not annoyed with us yet, give us a 5-star rating and share the podcast with your friends and say, this isn't actually that bad.
Now, we're actually not getting any money for what I'm about to say. I want to stress that. But I would like to say that this particular podcast is sponsored by La Vie Blanc du Castel 2023, which is an excellent white wine, crisp, fresh, and has led to our giggles throughout this particular episode.
And if you go back to our wine episode around a year ago, you'll hear us at the Domaine du Castel winery.
What episode number was that, Mark?
62. He says, picking a random number. I know it's not 62, it's probably about 80-something.
So have we done everything other than the question?
Should I have my list of people that annoy me? It's one at the moment, and he's sat next to me.
Okay, folks, here is the quiz question. It's a long one because I'm asking it, obviously. Georg Ratzinger was a German Catholic priest. He was a soap opera actor, a comedian, and a musician known for his work as the conductor of the Regensburger Domspatzen. His brother Joseph was better known by what name in later life?
Is it Joe?
No.
Joey?
No.
Seppa?
No.
Is it Pope Benedict the... it's in Latin.
He can't do Roman numerals.
Pope Benedict the
Fantastic.
16th.
Yes. Folks, until the next time, goodbye.
Goodbye.